I thought it was the real challenge was to make sure it was a satisfying climax. So I was very aware of not only the two films that I'd made, but the three that came before. So, for example, the film opens with an overture of all the main themes from all five movies put together. At the end, I don't want to talk about it too much, but I did add this thing that sort of brought you back into the spirit of all the other movies and kind of I think acts as a tribute to the whole phenomenon.
So, I mean, permanence is a very scary thing to me. I think things that don't change at all. As a metaphor, I don't know, vampirism for me was a way to live in fantasy and kind of have superpowers, but not just in a really perfect, happy, oh, everything is great. It's superpowers with a cost. It's having to be the villain, and what do you do about that?
But early on, again, that's one of the adaptations when you work in a visual medium. I thought, it can't just all be something that gets suggested, but take Bella's power. I really wanted to make it as subtle as possible, so that it really felt like, is it there or isn't it? It's sort of an emanation. It really, if you watch it, the first time it comes off her, you see a bit of her shape. It really feels like it's something that's part of her. But I didn't want it to be this kind of, Wizard of Oz bubble around or anything like that.
I broke my thumb maybe like the first or second day of our really sort of intense action-y type stuff. So that was really frustrating. But it was fun. I think I got a little taste of it. I got a little taste of it when we were in Italy. Just like the physicality was so important then, and it finally became important again. And
part of the turn on for me is that I think each director has gotten to introduce new chunks of people, and this is the movie where I got to do that and work with all these wonderful new actors. But yeah, it was part of the casting process right there, was realizing that everyone had to pop in a very short time. So that by the time you got onto that field and you kind of knew who everybody was and what they could do. It's a very interesting challenge because they don't get introduced until 40 minutes into the movie, and then a half hour later they have their final scene.
Well, I had planned out where it would go for a couple more books, so I know exactly what would happen. Whether it was, there are other characters that I think would have had a lot of voice in those coming stories. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll write it out just for myself. We'll see. It was fun. It's hard right now because I had just been asked if the actors had gotten into my head as the characters. And while I was writing Breaking Dawn, they hadn't, because I'd written a rough draft of that so much earlier, long before they were cast. But now they are in my head when I work on the stories. And it's hard for me to disassociate, and that does feel like it's a little corrupted. So it makes it more difficult.
And it's no secret I worship at the altar of Kristen Stewart, But I think, actually, her arc was pretty... it wasn't that big an arc across the first three movies. And in the beginning of the part one of this movie, she's in the spot where she'd been kind of, she fell in love. She's a high school now graduate who fell in love with a guy and is going to marry him, But I've always said, we made this as one movie. And I feel that, if you look at these two movies together, it really speaks to the achievement of Kristen Stewart, because she starts as that Bella that we've known from previous movies. She obviously, she becomes then pregnant and emaciated and loses her life and reinvented as a vampire. It's an amazing arc that she has across this, and it's so important for people to remember that we shot all that at the same time, So she would go from being this badass, warrior in this movie in the morning, and then she'd be emaciated in the afternoon. It was really an incredible thing to watch.
Things have fallen in my lap, and I've gotten incredibly, insanely lucky to get the right feelings and meet people that share them. And that's if I can keep doing that, I will be a happy girl. I think that it's always a pretty impulsive thing. It's always because you can read a fantastic script and that's not necessarily, it might not be in you to do. One thing that I don't think I do is play characters. As soon as you start claiming that you can be someone that you're not, you're crazy. And I think scripts can really surprise you. You go, wow, I did not know that I would respond to something like that. I did not know that I had that in me. And so the process of making the movie is just finding that, like digging a little deeper. And I think that's why maybe I've played parts that are really similar to me because I'm young, and I wanted to explore things that were like more apparent to me. And now getting to the point where I want to dig a little deeper, and yeah, you can shock yourself a little bit with this, and that's what I would like to do.
Well, I think she so embodies the character. She really, I think she has this extraordinary energy. She really is so focused when she is in something. I was really worried when we looked at the schedule, like, how are you going to do this? And it was this added challenge that she actually kind of got excited by. And I think mostly she was dying to play the vampire. I think she said it before, like she watched everybody else and said, "Oh, I can do that better," So this is her chance to prove it.
I'd been on the sidelines for so long, just itching, going like, God, I think I could do that pretty well. I think I could do that pretty well. I think those contacts are gonna look pretty cool. No, so I was like bursting to do it, and which I think is probably why I broke my thumb. I was a little overzealous.